A metaphor is a powerful tool to convey a message or to explain something. For example, I suspect most of you are aware of that scrum refers to something in rugby. I'm, however, a little bit confused to what the other team represents in this metaphor. Well, any metaphor breaks down at some point. Today's guest speaker, Gareth Holebrook, is a seasoned technology product development professional. He coaches teams using agile and lean techniques, while also using systems thinking approaches to organizational design. Gareth is also a veteran New Zealand representative triathlete with over 20 ultra-distance races. He brings the mindset of an endurance athlete to high-performance business work. Which leads us to the topic of this talk, how to apply the Ironman mindset to work and life. Gareth, take us away.
So today I'm going to talk about applying the Ironman mindset at work and in life. So if you think about how I have to think as an Ironman endurance athlete and how I can apply it at work, I've got 5 different tips that I want to share with you that you can apply tomorrow. Before that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Gareth Holebrook. I'm from Novavi, and Novavi is Latin for I will renew myself. We're based in New Zealand. So the themes I'm going to cover in this lightning talk are Kata, win, grit, consistency, and Ikigai. And you'll see for them first 3, it's about form, focus, and fortitude. So let's talk about Kata. Now, you may be familiar with Kata from Toyota Kata, and it was even Jimmy, you used to use that at Spotify, I believe, as well. Kata in Japanese means form. And if you look at that picture there, at the top is me just before a swim in Lake Taupo, which is where I do the Ironman. And beneath that is William Higgins, or Billy Higgins, and he was my sensei when I practiced karate back in the 1980s. Interestingly, I've just got back into karate after a 30-year break. And the thing about karate is about repeated action, deliberate practice, getting those 10,000 hours of practice. The more you practice, the more likely it is it's going to be hardwired into your brain. You can rewire your brain of how you work. So one of my swim coaches once told me, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you cannot get it wrong. And that's so important in swimming. It's so important in karate, but it's also important at work. We need focus and discipline and kata to repeat action. So what you can do and take away is think about those small little behaviors, those little habits that you can practice. And over time, that can become embedded in the way you think and the way you behave. So that was the first thing to take away. The next is win. Win stands for what's important now. Now, I did some research on where this came from, and the book is Lou Holtz, who's a football coach from decades ago. But it's really important. If you look at this picture here, this was me in Ironman Western Australia in 2017. And there's a few things that went on. Firstly, the swim was cancelled because sharks were spotted. But also it was 36 degrees. It got really hot and we were stood on the beach waiting to start. So we all started to cook. Then we had forest fires and I even had a snake jump out at me. The thing is, you can't think about the entire Ironman. An Ironman takes 10 to 12 hours for me. And you have to think about the swim, which is 3.8K of swimming. It's 180K on the bike and then a marathon, a full marathon. If you try and think about everything that could possibly go wrong, you'll become overwhelmed. Imagine, for example, you get a puncture. Now, there's 2 great videos on YouTube, one of Norm Stadler, Storm in Norman, and another of Chrissy Wellington, both in Kona in Hawaii. Both had a puncture. Storm in Norman threw a bit of a hissy fit and threw his bike in the air, and he really got out of the winner's mindset. Chrissy Wellington had another disaster. She lost a CO2 canister. She was ahead. And she had to wait until people caught up with her to throw a new canister to pump her tire up after the puncture. She eventually won that race. And the thing about what's important now is focus. Focus on the one thing that you need to deal with immediately. So when you have a puncture, those few minutes it takes to change the puncture, that's now part of the race. And there's no point fretting about it. That's the mindset. And we apply that at work. If we have a build failure or something goes wrong, there's no point worrying about how it happened or when it happened. The thing is to deal with it immediately and then retrospect later on. What's important now? That's the second thing I'd like to take away. Third is a book that I was really inspired by. It's by David Goggins. He was a Navy SEAL, and his book's called Can't Hurt Me. And he's done Ironman in Hawaii. He's also done BUDS, the SEALs Hell Week, and also the Army Rangers Hell Week. His book is fantastic, but you ask yourself, what would Goggins do? Grit is a composite of stoicism, of resilience, and of mindset. It's been able to master your mind and defy the odds. So what would Goggins do? Interestingly, last weekend, we should have been doing an Ironman, but sadly in New Zealand, it was cancelled or postponed because of COVID. So I had the mindset, what else could I do? And I discovered online that David Goggins had this challenge, which was 4 by 4 by 48. So every 4 hours, I had to run 4 miles for 48 hours. So that was 48 miles I had to run. And it was pretty tough getting up every 4 hours, sleep deprived, and going out and doing the run. And I managed it. I managed to raise funds for the local helicopter rescue people here in New Zealand. The point is, I always look for ways that I can challenge myself to callous the mind, to strengthen the way I think. And so Can't Hurt Me is the essence of that. So grit, what would Goggins do? Next is about consistency over intensity. Now, we are familiar with the phrase Kaizen. In Japanese, that means change for the better or change for good. There's also something called Kaikaku, which is quite a radical change, or even Kakushin, which is an innovation, a brand new start. There's a picture of me. I'm just coming towards the end of Ironman New Zealand. You'll love my Love the Pain suit there. And I was, by the way, going back to David Goggins, I was really suffering. I suffer from a condition in my feet called Morton's neuroma, so my nerves start to trap when my feet start to swell up. And I was in insane pain there. I don't know if you can tell. But the interesting thing is about how you train for an Ironman. You can't cram in the training a few weeks before. It takes months and months of continual change and continual improvement. And it's the way I race. I look at every edge I can get, every 1% I can get when I race. But it's also about consistency in training. It's not about intensity. And we need to think about that in the way we work. There's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I still see it's on a bestseller list in the New York Times this month. And so it's a few years old. And he talks about the compound marginal gains. He talks about Beresford and the British cycling team and how they changed many, many small things, even like teaching the cyclists to wash their hands from a surgeon so that they had less likelihood of catching a virus. This is all pre-COVID. And so he found that cyclists who got caught fewer viruses were able better to train more, so therefore were fitter. Now that would give you a tiny improvement over your competition. But if you compound all of those over time, you're likely to become, as a British cycling team became, world beating. So that's the essence of Kaizen, looking at those compound improvements. Kaikaku is still important, and sometimes you want to see that radical transition of change, and sometimes you need that radical change. And Kakushin is brand new innovation. All of them are important, but try and bias towards consistency over intensity. So the next slide is a great picture here. This is in Switzerland, the Powerman. This is the World Duathlon Champs. And that's my wife there. So interestingly, it's a duathlon, there's no swim. So it's a 10K run, and it's hilly in Switzerland, 150K on the bike, and then a 30K run. And the women start an hour before the men. And you see there, I came in at 9 hours and 8 minutes. That was my personal best. My wife, Thierry, came in at 10 hours and 8 minutes. And I could see throughout the run, I was slowly gaining on her. Every lap, I was catching up with her. And I finally caught up with her at the finish line. We were the only 2 New Zealanders there, that race, and we were able to finish hand in hand. Isn't that beautiful? So, Ikigai. Ikigai is finding out what you're passionate about, what you're good at, what the world needs, and most importantly, what you can be paid for. Now, interestingly, triathlon for me isn't my Ikigai, because as much as I love doing it, and the world does need sports, I'm not that good, I'm not world class, and I can't get paid for it because I'm not world class. So for me, it's really just a hobby rather than a profession. But what I do at work, I found out what my Ikigai is. It's not engineering, it's coaching. And I am a Kaizen coach, an Agile coach. And it's important to have, if you want grit and intensity and sustainability, you need to have that passion. That passion will drive you forward. and that will provide the focus. And it's only through focus can you have that deliberate practice and deliberate improvement that you get from Kata. So all of these 5 concepts all blend together, and between them, I believe they can be mapped from the way I think as an athlete over the way I think at work and the way I think in my broader life. Thank you very much. Here's my LinkedIn profile. I've also got a YouTube channel like you, Jimmy. I've got an Instagram account, so you can follow me as I lead my way up to Ironman Hawaii World Champs. Fingers crossed it happens this year. And finally, my Facebook page, which is Holbrook Tri. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth, for taking the time and being a guest on the show. I loved your talk.
Thank you, Jimmy.
And yeah, nice to see that you're still doing well. Even it's been a while since I were to New Zealand. I have a few follow-up questions for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Even though I haven't practiced Ironman myself and probably never will, I can totally get the kind of analogies from the metaphor you make on how to kind of the metaphor of how you can apply that Ironman mindset when practicing and competing into kind of agile at work or work in agile. But any metaphor has its limits. So where are the limits of this metaphor?
Yeah, I think it's about when to stop. So my first ever endurance race was the coast to coast. So it was a multi-sport race from the east to the west coast of New Zealand. And so it was kayaking, mountain running, cycling, and then a run at the end. And that took me 16 hours. It's actually a bit longer than an Ironman, and the mindset, that mentally it's much tougher. The thing is, I got cramp after my first bike, and I still carried on. And at one point, I thought I'd have to get carried off. It was so bad. But then at the time, I also had my small business. I had a small biohacking tech startup. This was back in 2005. And I was so proud. I said, I finished the Ironman. I finished the coast to coast. I did them back to back. And that shows me that I've got resilience and I've got that staying power, and I'm going to carry on. And I'd read about so many entrepreneurs who've done that. But the problem is, in business, you need to know when to back out. In Ironman, you never, ever give up. So even if I've had the worst day, in like that time in Western Australia when I was getting heat stroke, I still carried on, even though I was almost crawling to the finish line. In business, you want to say, this isn't working, we're not going to win, let's give it up. So for me, finishing is the win, but sometime in business, you need to make that call.
Yeah. Yes, you do. And another thing that struck me, you might, if you want to, or if you choose to, get a mental hiccup on Ironman individual effort, agile team effort. Do you see a?
Yeah, and this is the great paradox, because I coach teams. I talk about the essence of teamwork, and triathlon is all about ego and it's all about yourself. It's not really a team sport. A lot of people support you. Obviously, my wife is there and she supports me through training. But on the race day, it's an individual race.
Yeah.
And I actually don't, and I don't believe I'm saying this publicly, I'm not much of a team player, even though I'm a team coach. So when if I was in a team, I'd be so hard on myself if I let down the other team member, and I'd be so frustrated if another team member let me down. So. Yeah. And I know that's the thing, right? You have to win or lose as a team, and that's a particular mindset. But what I want to do is take the credit for my own competency. So yeah, it is different. It is very different.
Thank you for that answer. You dropped quite many great Japanese words, like Ikigai, Kaizen, Kaikaku, and Kakushin, and maybe there was more in there. If I'm curious, I want to know more. Can you guide me?
So I'm fascinated about Japanese culture, which is maybe one reason I took up karate as a child. And I learned a few Japanese words there. And then when I left the Navy, I did management postgrad, and it was all about Japanese management theory back in the 1990s. That was the thing. And then I was lucky to work at Sony. And then I studied the Toyota production system. And a lot of what we do in Lean and Agile, and the background of Lean in particular, goes back to Toyota. So the books I would recommend are things like The Toyota Way to Lean Leadership, and Toyota Kata. So the Kata, as we know in martial arts, is applied in an improvement kata and a coaching kata in Toyota. So I'd recommend studying anything about the Toyota production system, and you'll see there is a crossover to the way Japanese people think. But that was very much influenced by W. Edwards Deming from America. So it's an international thing, but it was just the Japanese pioneered it with their language. I know a lot of consultants use those trendy Japanese words. I'm surprised Fika hasn't had more groundswell here in New Zealand, because I think it's a great concept from Sweden. But certainly I use Japanese concepts quite a lot of the time.
Cool. One more. There's Novavi on the slide deck, and you started off with saying that, talking about Novavi. Can you tell me more about Novavi?
Yeah. Well, Novavi is two people founded Novavi just almost 18 months ago. That was Aldo and Horia. You've worked with Horia actually back in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And Aldo was on the Disciplined Agile Consortium advisory board, and Horia was coaching the PMI and was involved in the Agile Practice Guide. And then about 18 months ago, the PMI acquired Disciplined Agile. And so Horia and Aldo got together, and then they invited me in. Novavi literally means in Latin, I will renew. And by the way, it's very similar to Kakushin. And I'm just about to incorporate a company here called Kakushin Farms, because I've got a farm here, and we're starting to breed Wagyu beef, Japanese beef. So it's going to be Kakushin Wagyu beef. But anyway, that's a side note. So Novavi, what we focus on is training in Disciplined Agile. So we've been working with Al Shalloway, helping him develop his value stream consulting training and DA Flex, making it relevant to Disciplined Agile, which is a toolbox. So we coach and deliver Disciplined Agile training. That's one part. The second part is leadership. So we pair and partner with David Marquet's Intent-Based Leadership International. And so we have a few clients and we help with language. So you may have read Turn the Ship Around about his submarine, the Santa Fe, and how just through language he was able to make it from the worst performing submarine in the US fleet to the best.
Yeah.
And his recent book, Leadership is Language, was one of the top bestsellers last year and really highly recommended. So we're working with David Marquet. Then the third part is, which links these two things together, is governance and oversight. So we're writing a book between the three of us on adaptive oversight or adaptive lean agile governance. So that's what we do in Novavi. We're based in New Zealand, but we cover the whole Asia Pacific region. We're coaching in Singapore and in Australia as well.
Brilliant. Thank you again, Gareth, for taking the time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I enjoyed myself.
Thank you, Jimmy. It was a real honor to speak on your channel. Cheers.
You're most welcome. Take care, and I hope to see you sometime soon again.
Either in Sweden or you can come over here, mate.
Sounds good.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye-bye. Take care.
What did you make of the Ironman metaphor? And what is your own favorite metaphor for Agile and Scrum? Please leave a trail in the comments below. And thank you all, my wonderful, generous Patreons. If you too want to support my work of creating free educational videos here on YouTube, please consider becoming a Patreon and join our community. Talking about free videos, if you want to learn how to stop limiting yourself as a leader, you definitely want to listen to this advice from Ola Ljunggren Bergå. And until next time, explore, have fun, and be safe.